Hey there, I'm Tim, and it's time to help you choose what's on your table this weekend. Each week we pick 3 board games from a certain category and we tell you what they're all about. How many players they're for, how long they take to play, what they look like, what types of game mechanics are in there, and even what we like about those games, just to try to help you choose which games you want to play with your group this weekend. Well, why don't we take a walk on over to our closet and see what this week's category is. This week we're going to talk about Civilization themed games. Now, I have been playing Civilization games since the original Sid Meier's Civilization came out for the computer in 1991. Now, so it's a favorite genre of mine. I played it on my Macintosh LC for hours. My mom used to drag me off the chair and tell me to stop playing, go outside, do something different. But it's always been a favorite genre of mine. Now, some of you may be wondering, what is a Civilization game? A Civilization game is a game where it's themed around managing and developing a society of people. That is the definition on Board Game Geek. So basically what that means is you start off with a people. So in the case of the computer game, you start off with one warrior holding a club in 4000 BC. You form a settlement with them and they grow as they learn more. And you deploy people to work on different things so that way your civilization or your society can progress and grow and produce things and learn more scientifically. So for instance, one of the common mechanisms in a civilization game is a tech tree. And what that means is that you start off learning one thing. So in primitive times, you might learn about the wheel, or you might develop the wheel, and then it grows into more as you learn more and more and more. So, you might learn the wheel first, but come 7,000 years later or 6,000 years later, your people have now discovered the car and they're making cars as they progress. So it's basically a game that progresses over time. Your civilization grows and you learn more as you go. So without further ado, let's get into our 3 Civilization themed games for the week. The first is a very natural fit for the genre, and that's Sid Meier's Civilization: A New Dawn. So it's a board game version of Civilization 6. Now, I'd mentioned earlier that I've been playing Civilization since the first incarnation in 1991. The computer game is now in its 6th version, and this is a board game version of it. It's a 2 to 4 player game. It's medium complexity. The box says it takes 60 to 120 minutes. We find, depending on player count, it takes around 83 to 100 minutes. If I have a new player playing this game for the first time, I'd recommend adding 15 minutes to your playtime. In Civilization: A New Dawn, which is actually based on the Civilization 6 computer game, players are taking on the role of leaders of a civilization that start with a capital city. So here in this 2-player setup. You also get to be a famous leader in history, and you get different powers based on that. So in this case, we have Roosevelt and Cleopatra are our 2 leaders. Now on their turn, players are going to choose to use one of the 5 technologies that are in front of them. So in this case, Roosevelt might be able to use masonry, which will allow them to attack different spaces, which isn't that relevant yet at this point in the game. Astrology, which is going to let them advance in science and gain more knowledge. Pottery, which is going to allow them to either build a world wonder if they have enough resources in their civilization, or build a new city at a different spot on the map. We have early empire, which allows them to place control tokens. What control tokens do is they basically expand the borders of the civilization. And we have foreign trade, which lets you move caravans across the map to either meet different city-states or conduct trade with other players. Now, here's the tricky part about this game is that whenever you choose one of these cards to play, you actually have to slide it back down to the beginning. And there's 5 different levels here, and each level represents a different type of terrain that you can apply the effects of that card to. So the mountainous terrain is the most difficult, and you have to let your cards slowly move up before you can play that one, which makes it a really interesting planning game for planning out your next turn. Now, anytime your tech dial gets past a certain point, you can upgrade one of these technologies to do something similar but at the next level. So it gets more powerful as the game goes along. At the beginning of each round, this dial moves, and at certain points, some of the barbarians are going to move on you or respawn, or you're going to get some goods that you can trade with. Now, the game ends when somebody's able to meet 3 of the goals out here that are in front of you for building your civilization. The mechanics in Civilization: A New Dawn are modular board, variable player powers, and area majority and influence. If I had to pick 3 things that I really like about this game, apart from the fact that it's like a board game version of my favorite computer game, it would be this. First of all, it's a great board game first. And what I mean by that is this, is there have been previous board game takes, if you will, on the Civilization computer game. And what they've tried to do, and they were good to play, don't get me wrong, they were fun to play, but they tried to take the mechanics and the elements of a computer game and kind of dull them a little bit. Not dull them, but make them simpler, and then put it into a board game. And so basically what you had is basically a computer game on the board, and they don't always translate into different genres or mediums that way very well. This game focuses on being a great board game first. And then it adds elements of the computer game to it that make it a great board game. So it doesn't overstuff it with over complexities, because there's a reason why it's on the computer. It's because there's a lot of complex calculations. So this game focuses on being a great board game first. And because of that, it's probably my favorite game to play that is based on the Civilization series on computer. Another thing that I really like about it is the expansion, Terra Incognita. It adds more elements from the computer version to it, such as different types of governments, more leaders, different wonders, and it just rounds out the game beautifully. I can't imagine playing without the expansion. If you're buying this game for the first time, I'd buy the expansion right off the hop. The other thing I really like about it is the evolving victory conditions. So in the table shot, you saw 3 victory cards there, and those those cards get drawn at random at the beginning of every game. So the victory conditions are always different. It makes it a different game every time. Just talking about this game with you today has just made me want to play it even more, and I know you'll like it as well. So our next Civilization game is Innovation. Innovation is a 2 to 4 player game of medium complexity. It says on the box takes 45 to 60 minutes. I find it's a 50 to 60 minute game, but you only need to add 10 minutes to your budgeted playtime if you're playing with a new player. Innovation is a card game that takes on the concept of a Civilization style game that's played over the course of 10 ages. Now each age is represented by a draw pile in the circle, so age 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 10. Now we take one card from each age and set it aside to represent dominating that age, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But basically, players can do one of 4 things on their turn. First, they can draw. And anytime they draw cards, they have to take cards from whichever lowest age is still available in the draw pile. So if there are no age 1 cards here, I could draw from age 2, for instance. And that's how the technologies progress throughout the game. But I'm going to draw this card here. It's City States. I could play a card from my hand. So I can play a card from my hand and put it in front of me. Now there's 5 different colors that represent different types of technologies on these cards. This is the purple one. If I already have a technology of that color in front of me, then I must stack it on top. Okay, I have to stack it on top. So let's say I had an age 2 card that's purple. I would go from having my current purple card be City States to becoming Philosophy. And that's how things progress throughout the game, is because you're forced to stack on top of there and the technologies get more advanced and more modern. Now you can also activate any of your cards. So on each card there's some writing, and each card has a special power. And there's little icons in this card. So currency here has a tree and 2 crowns. And if I were to activate the currency card, it would say I can recycle any number of cards from my hand. If I do, I can draw and score an age 2 card for every different value of card that I recycled. And it says that anybody can do this who has as many of these crowns in front of them as I do, or more. So basically anybody who has 2 crowns or more around the table would be able to do that. Now there's also certain activations that say if I have the most of a certain symbol or more of a symbol than other players, anybody who has less get penalized in some way. So there's a lot of take that there. And there's also some as well that allow you to do something called splaying. So splaying means if you have a stack of, say, green cards and I wanted to splay them up, I could do that. And now I have 4 crowns instead of 2 crowns and 3 extra tree symbols as well. So it helps you get more symbols for these different card activations. You could say splay left, or you could also splay right, and it would let you do different things based on that. So splaying is a big part, is a really big mechanism in this game. The last thing that you can do in your turn is you can do something called dominating. Now there's certain times, and I read one here with currency, that lets you score a card. And what that means is that you get to take a card from a certain age that's specified, and you put it under there, and it's worth as many points as the age it's from. So here I've scored an age 1 card, meaning that it's worth 1 point. Now, whenever I mentioned earlier how these cards are set aside and you can claim them when you dominate that age. In order to dominate, say, age 1, I need to have the number of the age, so 1 times 5 points in my influence tableau here in order to be able to claim it. So in this case, if I had 5 influence points here, I could dominate age 1 and put it there. I'd need 10 points to dominate age 2 and so forth. To win the game, you have to have either 6 dominations in a 2-player game, 5 dominations in a 3-player game, or 4 dominations in a 4-player game. There's also other ways to get dominations by basically satisfying certain conditions that I won't get into here. But basically, whoever can dominate the pre-specified amount based on how many players are playing the game wins. Now, the mechanisms in innovation are hand management, layering, splaying, tech trees, and variable phase order. So if I had to pick 3 things that we've liked about playing innovation, it would be this. The first is the splaying mechanic. Now, this was honestly my first experience with the splaying mechanic, but I really enjoyed how it just can make it really versatile as far as different strategies are concerned and how you might choose to splay your cards and how it can affect activating the cards and some of the take that mechanisms. I really enjoy the fact as well that it's really easy to set up and take down. There's just 10 stacks of cards, you put them around the table and you play. It literally can be set up in like a minute or less, and that makes this fun for me to just get it out and play it. Now, the last thing, and probably my most favorite thing about this game, is the take that mechanism. My friends and I, when we've played this game, we have so much fun with the way that take that works in this game. It's not uncommon to see us sitting at the table cackling as we scheme as to basically do something terrible to each other next, and it's done in a way that's fun and tasteful. It's not, some take that games get exhausting and it's just too many negative interactions. It's done in a way that keeps it fun and light, and we've had so much fun just making fun of each other and teasing each other as we play this game. Now, our last civilization building game, you'll find it on any top 10 board game list that you ever look at, and it's Through the Ages. Now, Through the Ages is a 2 to 4 player game. It's heavy complexity. The box says it takes 120 minutes. If I'm being honest with you, we have found it's taken anywhere from 135 to 195 minutes, depending on the player count. I'd recommend adding 45 minutes to your budgeted play time for this game. Through the Ages is a civilization game, just like the rest, where each player is starting out with a tableau right here, and they're trying to build on that by getting new technologies and being able to do more and have more capacity because of those technologies. So each player starts with a warrior, which is going to provide them strength for every worker that's on that particular technology. So these yellow cubes represent your workers. So I have 1 yellow cube on there, and the card says each yellow cube is going to be 1 strength. So I get 1 strength for every yellow cube on there. Agriculture, which is going to produce me food. So at the end of each turn, each worker on there is going to give me 1 food, and each of these blue cubes represent resources, represents 1 unit of food. So right now I have 2 food in my stores. Bronze is going to be coal that I can build things with, so same thing. I've got 2 bronze right now. If I have 1 worker on philosophy, it's going to produce me 1 science. Now, science can be spent as you accumulate it to buy new technologies, of course. And on every turn, basically, each player has a number of actions that they can take based on the type of government they have. Now, you start off with despotism, which is going to give you 4 civil actions and 2 military actions. Now, what that means is that a military action would be, say, taking a worker and putting them on warriors, which I can do. If I have 2 coal, which I have, I could spend it to put a worker on there, and I get stronger, and I have spent a military action. You can also use your civil actions to do things in the civil realm as well. So for instance, there's cards up here that represent different things for you. These yellow cards are action cards. They're going to help you do things more easily. These are wonders that you can build. And sometimes as well, there's also technology upgrade cards, which I would have in this deck here. So for instance, cartography would add 1 strength to my hand for a price of 4 science. So you can buy these cards basically spending civil actions. So a card over here, there's 1 dot. I spend 1 civil action to take this card in my hand. If I want to jump ahead and I really think a card that's going to be further in the queue is worth it, I could spend, say, 3 dots right now to get Alexander the Great in my hand. Now, these green cards are leaders, and you can have leaders that are also assisting your civilization that are going to give you different bonuses as well. So that's one way you can spend civil actions. You can also spend civil actions playing one of these cards when they're in your hand. You spend 1 to play it. Now, if you're playing a science card, a card that is upgrading your science, you can spend the science that you have to build on top of it. Let me find you a good one here. So printing press is a good one. So is iron. So let's say I wanted to upgrade my ability to do coal. I could spend 5 science to put it on top of this card, and now any worker on this card instead costs me 5 coal instead of 2, but they're also going to produce me 2 coal instead of 1, so they produce more. So yeah, you can spend civil actions playing the cards in your hand, doing different things based on the cost of them. You can also spend them upgrading as well. So for instance, if I have a worker here on my level 1 or level A bronze card, and it was worth 2 coal to get them there, I could spend 3 instead of 5 and just move them up. If I spend the full 5, then I get to take a whole worker and put it up there as well. And basically, yeah, you do this to keep building your tableau, to get better at different technologies, and you're doing it all to try to earn culture. So right now I earn 1 culture per turn. If I can get different technologies and give me more culture, so for instance, printing press, if I put a worker there, it will cost me so first of all, it costs me 3 science to add it to my tableau. For 3 coal, I can put a worker there, and that worker will generate me an extra culture and an extra science per turn. So this is where I track my science and culture per turn. If I do that, I'm going to get 2 culture at the end of my turn instead of 1 like I did before with just religion here. So basically, you just spend the whole game trying to build up your tableau and progressing your technologies and your workers and your capacity, all in the name of building culture. Now, it's played over 3 ages, and each age is represented by one of these decks. Now, there's a few things you need to be careful of. If you don't keep your people happy enough, they'll revolt and they won't produce anything for you. And this is your population pool here. You can increase your population by spending food to bring them up there, and then they're available for you to spend and deploy to different cards. If you don't have enough military strength, other players might attack you and you'll lose things as a result. It could be science, it could be culture, it could be resources, but they can attack you and take stuff from you more or less. The last thing you need to be careful of is if you don't spend enough of these blue cubes as you produce them and you're hoarding them, then you become corrupt and you lose them as well. So it makes for some really interesting balancing acts throughout the game. So long story short, you basically build up your tableau to produce culture. Whoever has the most culture at the end of the game wins. Now the mechanics in Through the Ages are bidding and auction up here, income when you get to take your different blue cubes back, action points here, card drafting, and tableau building as well. Well, if I had to pick 3 things that we've really enjoyed about Through the Ages, is that the first is that the game just flows really well. As you start playing the game, you get the hang of the turns, and there's a guide on there that tells you how the turns flow and what you need to do at the end of each turn. You get the feel of it, you start to feel the flow yourself, and you really get the hang of it really, really well. The next thing that I really like about this game is that there's multiple ways to catch up. Now, what I mean by that is that in this game, it's inevitable that somebody becomes a front runner. I'll be honest, when I play with my friends, it's often me and I end up losing. That's how good the catch-up mechanisms are. But there's different ways that you can get back in the game through aggressions, military power, and different event cards that you can play that get you back in there. And because of that, the game forces you to progress. So it makes it so that way, if you know what you're doing in this game, it's going to be a pretty even match every time, where you always feel in it. The last thing that I really like about this game is the incredible and addictive app. This is easily one of the best adaptations of a board game on your smartphone or on your tablet that I've ever seen, if not the best, but it's right up there. It's really easy to play. It's not very, it's really bug free. The asynchronous play is amazing. And yeah, like at any given time, I probably have 3 games of this going on in my app, just waiting for my turn. If you download the app for this game, like, you just simply won't be disappointed, but you also won't be disappointed if you play the physical version as well. Well, that's it for another week. I hope that you've enjoyed learning about these Civilization games as much as I have thoroughly enjoyed playing Civilization games for the last 30 years of my life. If you like this video and you want to see more videos about board games like this, you can always hit subscribe below or click that little bell to get notified anytime we have a new video. Or even better, comment on the video and just tell us what you think of these games or what's on your table this weekend.